Hey everyone, it's Brock, and I want to welcome you back to the stories that shape us. Today we are on episode 15 of this podcasting journey, and this episode might feel a little different, but in the best way possible, because I'm sitting down with someone that I've known since college. It's been 8 years, I can't believe that, but we've known each other through some wild seasons, some laughs, wins, setbacks, even walking home from house parties at the early morning hours of the day, then turning around and studying or doing homework in the library Sunday afternoon with a pounding headache and hung over from all of it. But through it all, we remained in contact and friends. And today, Kyrin has a story that is going to hit home for a lot of people. He's 26 now, and let me tell you, he's lived a lot of life already. He's had highs, lows, and everything in between. But more than that, he's rebuilt his life with purpose, faith, and it has lit a fire inside of him to rise above it all. So, let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Kyrin. I'm happy you're here, man.
I'm happy to be here, man. And you know, I'm glad that I was able to hop on and be a part of what you got going here. I think it's beautiful that you're allowing people to share their story, bringing people together, and showing us all that we're not all that different from each other. We got struggles, we got highs and lows, and from one person to the next, we're all made of the same thing, right? So, appreciate you for bringing me up.
Hey, absolutely. I'm honored to have you here. It's been fun watching your journey. Maybe not the setbacks, but the way you've grown and raised above them. And I just remember going back to our freshman year. We were next door neighbors in the dorms, and we had some wild times. Do you remember our first time meeting?
Oh, Lord, man. Yes. We're sitting in this big gym. A million kids, it feels like, in there. We're all sitting there not knowing what we're about to do with ourselves. And they just pile us in here and they go, okay. And they separate us all into months by our birthday. And we're sitting there and we get to talk to each other for a little bit. And I remember me, you, and two other kids. Can't remember who the two other kids were, but we just started BSing for a little while. And we kind of just got stuck at the hip. And then they went around, they were like, all right, let's start some conversation topics. Like, what day is your birthday on? And they went around, dude, and standing right next to each other, like, September 17th. And we're both, boop. And then we looked at each other and we're like, well, shit, here we go, man. And it's history since.
Did we just become best friends?
Did we just become best friends? I think we did.
And little did we know that we were living right next to each other, though, too.
Yeah, because, I mean, we all came in through our stuff in the dorms, and then it was straight off to orientation. So, yep, we were sitting there like, that's crazy. And then we get home for the next year, and we're like, holy, this is crazy.
Oh, man. To think back then, we were trying to survive our freshman year of college, living in the dorms, and now we're out here surviving real life. That's another crazy topic of its own. But take me back to your childhood. What was life growing up in those pre-college years of Elko, Nevada?
It was a lot and a little, all at the same time. So Elko is a little mining community with a very large Basque settlement. So there's a large Basque culture in Elko. If you don't know who the Basque are, I highly advise to look into them. They're an amazing people, amazing culture. I believe they come from Spain. They hail from Spain. They have huge celebrations every year, and it's like the main frame, right? At the end of the day, Elko is a huge agricultural place. And so my family and myself, I grew up ranching, you know. It was a lot of early mornings, late nights, doing a lot of family chores and keeping animals fed, you know. But in turn that kept us fed. So All good. My mother, out of 5 children in her family, was kind of the black sheep. Everybody else kind of went the ranching and rodeo direction. My mom found her spot in sports. And so that's kind of what harnessed my journey, I guess you would say. Because my mom branched off, started in sports, and then that's kind of what we did. So we were right on the fence between, having a country ranch life and actually turning and being more of what people would call a civvy, you know, and have more of a civilian life playing sports and be inner city. So there was a lot of transitioning there, and I found it pretty interesting growing up on that fence and seeing, the different cultures between those two different sides, and then also being pulled towards both cultures. I found it hard to kind of find a place I'd want to sit because, against common belief, country folk and city folk don't see eye to eye very often.
Nope, two different lifestyles.
Totally two different lifestyles, man. And it's two different focuses, Country is 100% a lifestyle. I mean, if you're on the agricultural side of things, if you're ranching, taking care of animals and feeding this country, feeding your family, that's a lifestyle. It's every day, 24/7. It's not a job. You don't get breaks. There's no holidays. It's 24/7, right? And then on the city side of things, it's a different grind. We have a lot of things that I think we might take for granted. Grocery stores, convenience stores, places that you can just go and get these things really quick. And so we don't really worry about the hardened nature of that. Our hard work comes into getting the money to acquire it. So it's two different sides of the same story.
Absolutely.
And so growing up, that's what I saw. I was like, we're all fighting the same battle, but if you ask an old country dog what he thinks about, that city slick, he's going to say, show me his palms. And if you go over to that nice slick guy and you say, hey, look at that old country folk, he's going to look over and be like, that homeless guy over there looks like he ain't showered in 3 days. Both could be right, but in their own respect, neither could do what the other does. So,
yeah, it's two completely different lifestyles. I grew up
totally
in a small
different
town.
worlds.
Yeah.
Two totally different worlds. So,
And I've only been to Elko once. I was driving through on my way to San Francisco for spring break my junior year of college, and we got a flat tire.
oof.
And some guy took us back to his trailer, and kind of sketchy. I thought he was going to be like Jeffrey Dahmer or something, but we trusted him, and he helped us fill up our tire, and then we went and got a patch just down the road. So Elko folks are definitely more friendly, I would say, than the bigger city folks.
There's a wholesome side, and there's very good people in Elko. It was,
Yeah.
I went back just last year visiting my family. Went down for my grandparents' 50th anniversary. Saw my whole family for the first time in a long time, and the stuff that has changed there. I mean, during COVID, the mines were booming. Like, they were booming, and you can see it. The town grew overnight, it feels like, for me. I mean, it was years, but I just couldn't believe how much it grown, and it went from a small, tight-knit community, probably like the one that you drove through, to, something kind of like we see in Bozeman up here. It wasn't huge when we got here, but we're definitely seeing it get there.
I remember when I was a kid, Bozeman wasn't big at all.
No.
Like, Bozeman and Belgrade were two different cities, but now they're one.
Said at the beginning of all this, I remember, Brock, I remember Halloween, our freshman year, and we came over to Bozeman, and I still have the pictures of our costumes running around. Oh man, we don't need to bring that up. Send people on a search for those. Oof.
Yeah, no. What kind of dreams did you have as a kid? You said that you lived a ranch life, but you also lived an athletic life. Do you think that did you ever think you'd be where you're at today?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because to be completely honest with you, that was one part of my life that I truly had a hard time discovering what I wanted to do. And I don't think that I actually was organically thinking for myself in that department until way after I had already left home, you know. I was the oldest of five. So one, I had three siblings that I loved and adored. I mean, I'm sure they'll tell you I was a great big brother. Um, but I did. I cared for my siblings quite a bit, and I played a big role in making sure we all got to do what we wanted to do, you know, and getting them around to places in my later childhood. In my early childhood, again, with sitting on the fence, it was hard, you know. I loved and idoled all my uncles, you know, and they're all out cowboying and rodeoing. But then I would go to school, you know, and then things that I've been doing my whole life, like playing basketball and track, those were my social cues when I was out in society. So I really felt like I was kind of in a tug of war match with myself between um, between going and being, you know, a cowboy like my family, or if I wanted to be an athlete and be cool in the eye of society. Obviously, that's not really how it was, but in a young boy's mind, that's kind of how it played out. And so I found myself really fighting myself quite a bit on, did I want to be on my family side of things, or did I want to be on social side of things? And I kind of sat there and made this problem in my head as I could only do one or the other. Right. I couldn't be a cowboy that played sports, or I couldn't be an athlete that had the time to manage a ranch. And I think as a young human being, I was being realistic looking at it that way. But I think I was also limiting myself and not allowing myself to grow and actually discover myself.
Was there ever a defining moment growing up that shaped your perspective early on?
Um, well, to be honest, all through high school, all through middle school, pretty much through my whole childhood, the only thing that I had in sight was sports. I think it was around that middle school time that I finally, you know, had made the conscious decision that I was going to be an athlete. That's what I was going to do. And so everything kind of transitioned. AAU started picking up. I mean, my mom and me sat down and calculated it one year, dude. In 7 days out of a year, I wasn't playing sports. So I was going almost 365 every year, nonstop, no rest, from one sport to the next, just workhorsing, dude. And I mean, it was nonstop. I was barely home in the summers because I was out doing, you know, sporting tournaments. And then when I was home for the fall and the winter, I was playing athletics in high school. And that's kind of what drove my childhood. It wasn't till I got to college that things and priorities started to blur. And then it was after college that it was kind of, you know, the wake up call of, hey, there's a lot of opportunity out here, but we got to sit down and actually find out what who we are and what we want to do before we can ever hope to figure any of that out, right? So
Who would you say that your biggest influence or role models were back then growing up?
I grew up without a father figure till about 6, I would want to say. Right, 6 years old is about when my stepdad, his name's JD, he came into my life, and he will forever be my father. Right, rose me, took care of me, taught me how to be a man. But up until that point, my uncles and my grandpa, like my uncle Dustin, drug me around and did everything with me. Whether or not that was because a little kid got better reaction from the ladies or not, we won't know, you know. But he drugged me around everywhere with him, and I really thought that was pretty cool. I learned a lot from him. My grandpa taught me how to be a good moral human being. He was always like, nowadays I always laugh at him because he's getting soft in his old age. I was the oldest grandchild, so I still got, the ruffian of Ralph Allen, my grandfather. Um, I tease him all the time about that, but I'm grateful for it because he showed me around a lot of corners, even in the early years of me with a new father. When JD came into the picture, we had a lot of tension. By the time everything was solidified and he married my mother, I was old enough to basically put my dukes up. And so whenever he did try to be a father or the man of the house, he was met by a prepubescent teen that was like, yeah, I'm not doing anything you say, and we'll come to blows, right? So that is my childhood in a nutshell. I grew up in the country, and I wanted to be in the city. And now that I'm an adult, I'm in the city or in town, and I don't want anything but to get out. I want I want to be so far away from town. It's not even funny. Like it's funny how things swap up like that, but
That's so funny because I was born and raised in small town USA, and I'm living in downtown Dallas now, and I love it. Like, I'm looking at skyscrapers right now as we're talking. There's skyscrapers, there's some Top Golf,
well, and I love the
a bunch of
beauty and
cars and
aesthetic.
traffic.
Yeah. Like that sounds beautiful to me. I love like pictures of New York. I love it. Like the cities do look absolutely beautiful to me. Florida looks absolutely beautiful to me. My wife and her whole family are from Florida. She wants to go back to Florida so bad. It looks beautiful to me, man. But at the end of the day, it's like as I've grown and learned more about myself, I also find that I have a hard time when there's large groups of people because large groups of people have a hard time communicating. And that's a big thing. I need to have clear communication in my life or I struggle. So
Absolutely. Let's fast forward a little bit to college because, man, college was a ride. What do you remember most about those college years and what really sticks with you today?
a lot of people look back on college and they they're like, "Oh, college, great experience." I I personally can't say the same thing. One, because I've grown, and it doesn't mean that I didn't have good experiences in college. I had amazing experiences in college. I met great people, had great time, and some of the highlights of my life were in college as of right now. But when I look back from where I am now to then, I'm a little disappointed in myself. I think I took everything for granted. I think I got a little ahead of myself and got sucked into the moment and kind of lost track of why I was there. And I was just infatuated with being there. Which, needless to say, led to some downfalls. I mean, when I first got there, college was awesome. You roll in, you're a football player, right? I got a scholarship to U of M. If we want to back up before that, when I was an athlete in high school, my senior year, I was actually pulling quite a few offers and had a few different places that I had options, more or
Give me a
less to
few.
say.
Name a few of them.
I had Michigan in my email box. I had Army, Air Force, and the Navy all in my inbox. I had a few envy leagues, but everybody who knows me can tell you ain't no shot I was making it there, dude.
I'm just gonna
Ain't
laugh at you.
ain't no shot. Ain't no shot. I ain't dumb, but I like rocks. I tell you what.
You
No,
have a
dude.
box of rocks?
My kids do somewhere. Shoot, I got a box of rocks sitting right next to me with a gecko in it. But um no, I had a few offers to a few places. I'm not going to say that I had scholarship offers, but I had offers to venture into some D1 schools. I ended up hurting myself my senior year playing football and had all of that wiped off the table. And I actually had a buddy that was playing football at the University of Montana Western. And he heard about my accident and stuff, and he was like, listen, dude, he's like, if you still want to play football, he's like, I will straight up walk into my coach's office and tell him about you. He's like, I guarantee you come here and play. He's like, but I'm not going to say nothing if you don't want to come and play. And I told him, I was like, dude, there's nothing more that I want to play than football right now. And I want to go to college, but I'm not going to college unless I have sports. You know, I knew myself, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to drive myself through college unless there was a pushing force. And so he lined everything up, and then I think it was 2 weeks later, I got a call from Coach Norris. He called me, and he was like, hey, watched your film. He's like, I would really love for you to come down on a visit. And I don't know what these college scouts do or where they find their athletes or if they have to put something in a system, but if one messages you, they all start messaging.
It opens up the floodgates.
It opens up a door. And so in the conference alone, I had 4 or 5 offers, right? I went on 4 or 5 visits. The difference is that the other colleges knew that I had just been hurt, and so they were leveraging. And when I came in to see Norris, one, he never left my side. That's one thing I will give him credit for. I'd been to a lot of walkthroughs. I got left in a locker room for 2 hours one time, just standing there in the middle of a personal walkthrough. There was nobody else there. It was just me, dude. Homie just left me in the locker room. Forgot about me. That was Carol, actually. Just name drop him.
You can't spell Carol without 2 L's.
Dude. But no, he just gave me a wholesome feeling. He told me, this is a family environment, and we're going to treat you like family. We're going to make sure you're taken care of. And then on top of that, the block system at UM Western is immaculate. I'm not, like, I'll say this a million times probably during this interview, but I'm not dumb, but I'm not smart. In the eyes of the public school district, I am not the smartest tool in the shed. By any means. I actually discovered later in life probably a large reason as to why I had so many problems in school. Needless to say, school was hard for me. I couldn't keep my grades up. I mean, I wasn't a bad student. I wasn't a failing student, but I was like a B and C, like real, and I was trying. Like, that was another thing. My parents used to always be like, you need to try, or like, if you tried harder, you could have got into these bigger schools. And I was like, I tried, homie. I tried. Like,
yeah.
But no, at the end of the day, Norris made me feel like I was still a human being instead of a number, instead of a record. So I ultimately decided to go to Western. I came to Western. Everything was amazing. Got on board with the team, and everything started clicking right away. I got redshirted my freshman year, which meant, I would get to travel. And pretty much if one of the starters got hurt, I get to be on the team now. Like, it's like the best possible situation for a red shirt. And so I was pretty ecstatic. The one thing that I always laugh about, though, is that I spent my entire redshirt season on offense as a wide receiver, and then after the entire season was done, they brought me into the office. They sat me down. They were like, Kyrin, we're gonna move you to defense, and we're gonna start you. And I just remember looking at him, and I was like filled with excitement, but at the same time I was like, I just wasted a whole year. Like, a whole year, and I had went in initially as a defensive player. That's what I had advertised myself as. And so Coach Good was not happy with that decision. And ultimately, he pulled me back over. But I was like, dude, just wasted my whole redshirt year trying to learn a book that you guys. I told Norris straight to his face one day. It was the funniest thing because he looked at me and he was like, tough shit, figure it out pretty much. But I walked in and I was like, Norris, I can't figure this book out. He gave me an offensive book and it was like this big. And it had like 6 plays in it, and each play had like 18 audibles. And I was like, I can't do that, Norris. I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic. Undiagnosed, but I'm pretty sure. Like, you can't
Just tell
throw
me
that
man
many.
coverage or zone coverage. I don't need a
That's
route running.
literally what happened, because they brought me over to defense, and there's audibles and stuff on defense too. Coach Good sat me down one day, and he was like, listen, Kyrin, he's like, when you're looking over there and you're seeing all these hand gestures, he's like, you need to pay attention to one human being. That one human being will do 1 of 4 hand gestures. That tells you what to do. That's all you need to pay attention to. Immediately was on top of my A game. I just needed it to be simplified.
We've obviously come a long way from dorm rooms, right, and dollar menus.
Oh, 100%. But looking back,
what was life like on the daily back then?
On the daily, it was insane. It was insane. So I walked into college at 185. I was a string bean. Tall string bean, dude. Didn't look like I could hurt any. They sat me down there like, hey man, you're a great athlete. We want you at 225. I ain't never seen 200 a day in my life. Okay. So first of all, I was like, okay, cool. And they're like, yeah, we need that done before season, which starts in 2 months. That's a different story. You're asking me to pack on, 40 to 50 pounds in 2 months, and it all had to be positive weight. Like, I couldn't just get fat, dude. The position I played, I couldn't just get fat. So I remember Coach Good put me on this diet, and he was like, yep, you get to the meal hall in the morning, you eat a family-sized bowl of salad. You put any type of topping you want on that salad. He's like, you load it up. He's like, and then you have a bowl of oatmeal. So that's pretty much what I ate for breakfast every day for 2 months. And then I'd have 2 granola bars, I'd go to morning workout, have 2 granola bars on the way there. Then I'd go to the meal hall, have breakfast. Then I'd have 2 more granola bars, go to class. Then I'd get off of class, and I'd go eat lunch, whatever they were serving in the meal hall, have 2 to 3 plates of it. Then you go and you relax. Everybody knows that means go get a fucking job. So you go get a job. And then when you're done with your job, you come back and you have practice at night. And so you'd go to night practice and then you're done. And at the end of the day, I would go over to Safeway and I would buy a rotisserie chicken and a little bottle of ranch dressing. And I would stop at McDonald's right there across the way and grab a caramel frap, and I'd go home, sit on my couch, and smash that whole rotisserie chicken with that whole bottle of ranch, and then I would eat a bowl of ice cream and go to bed. Wake up, do it all over again. And
I'm surprised
by the
you're
end of
not
that,
on my 600-pound life.
dude, by the end of the 2 months, I was at 225. And it was all muscle. I didn't have an ounce of fat on me, man. And it was because we were doing 2 days and stuff. We were crazy schedule, But as an athlete, that's kind of what you're accustomed to. It was always working out. That's what you did. If you weren't studying, you were working out. So.
Do you think the version of you back then would recognize the person that you are today?
He'd probably laugh at me, to be honest.
Why is that?
Because he was on a different wavelength back then. He got to a point, he went through high school and stuff as a spectacular athlete, and then he got to college and got through his freshman year, and stepped into his sophomore year and immediately was playing and hit the top of the charts pretty quickly within the start of the season, and he lost himself. And when I say that, I truly believe that towards the downfall of myself in college, I had developed a bit of a God complex. I thought I was untouchable. I got a little bit enveloped in the moment. I knew how much I had going for me, and I thought my shit didn't stink. And so I carried myself that way. I don't think that I was a bad person. I don't ever think that I was a bad person or that I had, any ill will towards anybody. I always tried to carry myself and be a good person or a person that people wanted to be around, right? But I think that since I got a little bit enveloped in the moment, I developed a little bit of a God complex and I stopped thinking about both consequence and how other people would react to my action.
Yeah. Well, there's obviously no blueprint for your 20s, right? So what's something that you think that
So
you had to learn the hard way in the real?
so you're on your own for the first time. That first year is kind of a year of figuring shit out, and then that sophomore year, you're like, oh, I got it figured out. It's like another stage of puberty, I guess you could say, right? It's like when you're a teenager for the first time. Oh, everything starts making sense, and now you got the whole world figured out, right? Well, I think that's exactly what kind of happened to me. I got a little ahead of myself. I was like sick, I started looking too deep into my future and started thinking that I had already made it despite of the road I still needed to travel. Um, and I just kind of, one, I let my guard down, and two, I started making careless decisions. And because of that, I started slowly but surely putting myself in situations that eventually tipped the scale and and totally plunged me into darkness.
But ultimately, you've rebuilt yourself not once, not twice, but three times, is what you were saying when we were on the phone. What do you think kept you going when most people would have tapped out in those moments?
I'm going to tell you right now, I did tap out multiple times. I tapped out damn near every time. And excuse me, this is going to get a little emotional. But I'll just walk you through it. So the first time I kind of had to rebuild. I had just left home, right? My family for the first time was like we were picture perfect, I guess you could say, from the outside. Everything looked amazing. I had been in college for a year, and then I had actually come back for my sister's graduation. So she had just graduated high school, and I was on my way back home from that. And that's when my mom called me, and she was like, "Your dad just fucking left." Didn't say shit, just literally grabbed all of his shit and fucking left. So immediately overnight, unannounced or foreseen by any of us really, our family just broke apart. And my mother, she's she was an amazing mother and is an amazing mother. And the things that she's done for her children, God bless her, right? But with that being said, I think she lost a large part of herself being a mother. And with that, so when all of her birdies started leaving the nest, she didn't know what to do with herself, you know. And that's from the outside looking in. That's a bias, but as the oldest, that's kind of what I visualized and got to take in. Needless to say, that started its own huge slippery slope. I had three siblings still at home. Within a year of all that happening, my brother had just actually went to juvie. He got caught up in a bunch of um, juvenile stuff, ended up in juvie. I was in college. Gabe just left home, or well, I guess she just graduated. She hadn't even left home yet. And then my two youngest sisters at home, and then it just bombshelled, right? So, as the oldest sibling, I felt like I needed to try to get all my siblings together, and that put a pretty big toll on me. And I remember it got to the point where I walked into Coach Norris's office and I told him that I need to go home. My family's gone. My brothers and sisters are lost. I need to go home and take care of them. And he sat there and he listened and he shook his head. And then he kind of waited a second. He looked at me and he said, Kyrin, he said, if you want to go home, I'll help you get home. He said, I won't keep you. He said, if you need to go home for a little bit and you want to come back, he said, I'll do that for you too. He said, but speaking from experience, he said, your siblings need you to be strong. They need to see you stay on your feet. And that right there kind of hit home for me. And that was leading into my sophomore year, right? So, sophomore year of college hits, football starts. I have all this shit going on. And I start turning up, right? I think it was 4 seasons in. I had my first article written about me. I was, for like a week, I over-exaggerate this all the time. I'll be honest with you, though. It was only about a week that I was number 2. I was ranked number 2 over all DBs in all conferences, stat-wise. Even the NFL, which means I was the best. Well, I was the second best cornerback in the country for a week. And, you know, so everything just kind of started looking up. I kind of started picking myself up. And right in the midst of all that, my grandfather had just passed away, you know, a little bit prior. And something had come up with my grandma about him. And I just remember it threw another wrench and everything. That one, he had already passed away, so it was an old ordeal that had just kind of resurfaced. And then by the end of my sophomore year, I didn't even complete my sophomore year, but towards the end of my being at UM Western, I just remember I think I was sober maybe 2 days a week. 2 days a week, I think I was sober. I was either really, really high, you know, just walking, just kind of ghosting my way through life, or I was hurrying my way through everything so that I could get home, so that I could start partying. And I mean, you were there, dude. If you wanted to party, you didn't have to look for very long or have to go very far to get there, right? So, just like you said, it started turning into a scenario where I was sleeping for the first hour of my 3-hour class, and then, you know, waking up hungover and getting through. It just started to really turn into a disappointing state, looking back. I started to coast because I wasn't dealing with issues that need to be dealt with, right? So that was the first big fall. The second big fall is kind of the domino effect of the first, if I had to be completely honest. It was Halloween that sophomore year. I remember I had a huge article written about me. It was titled Allen's Island or something along those lines. Allen's Island. And pretty much what it stated is I was an unstoppable force, right? If you were going to send the ball my way, I was going to stop it. You weren't going to make any progress going to my side of the field. Is the summarized version of that article. That article was published on our way down to Montana Tech, our rival. And we were playing for the number 1 seed. If we would have won this game, it would have secured our place to go to nationals, and the fight would have been more or less over. Our season would have been extended automatically. And they published that. I remember everybody's going crazy about it the day before the game. And then we get there, dude, and I was super excited. And then that kickoff, and then we got on the field, and it turned into a nightmare. Because Montana Tech, and kudos to this coach, because I probably would have done the same thing, they had an article come out basically saying that one human being could stop their whole team. Like, you go towards him, he's stopping your whole team, is pretty much what this journalist said. And that coach and that whole team, they came at me that whole game. They scored 3 touchdowns. That's more touchdowns than I'd had scored on me in any game prior. They scored 3 touchdowns on me, and they did not stop. They threw the ball to me, they ran the ball to me, and it didn't matter where I motioned. I could go open side, I could go close side. They were coming towards my side of the field. They hit me all game long, and we lost. And I took it personal. So I got home and immediately went to the bottle. Immediately. I mean, I don't even think I got home from the trip. I think we got back and I got off the bus and went straight over to the office, the Met, and started drinking. And I made a very, very big mistake that night, and I threw a huge wrench in what would be my future. I walked away that night with a rape case that I fought for 2 years, and at the end of the day, I ended up in a no contest and did all my time and ended up on the streets as a civilian. And it was the first time in my life that I didn't know what my next step was. I remember not being able to leave the state and being stuck up. I didn't have any family to go to, so I think I had to sit in Dillon, which isn't very big, with a restraining order. I sat in Dillon and basically couldn't leave my house for 6 months. After that, I kind of picked up, decided to move over to Bozeman. Thankfully, my buddy, he allowed me to move in. His mother allowed me to move into her house, and so I kind of stayed there while I was trying to get on my feet in Bozeman. That right there was the point in my life that I ended up hitting absolute rock bottom and just had to turn everything around, Figured out that how far lost I was. And I'm sitting over here, I'm fighting this case. I'm going to these therapy sessions every day. I'm paying all these fines. I did 10 days in county. And I just remember getting to a point where I thought I was lost completely. I thought I didn't have a future. I thought I had completely fucked myself, and there was no hope. And but I ended up trying to take my own life. And I'm highly allergic to beer, but I was on antidepressants and a low dose, like a low pain med for my migraines at the time. And I actually attempted to OD myself. I had taken, I think it was between 2,300 and 3,000 milligrams of antidepressant and pain meds, and I washed it all down with, I think, 2 cans of beer just to solidify it. And I actually fell asleep and OD. And this is what I meant when I say I'm not the reason that I got over all these humps. It's the people that I had around me, thankfully. Her name's Karina. Karina knew the position I was in. And she knew that if she took me into the hospital to get me medical help, they would have reported it, and I immediately would have been in violation of my probation. I would have been sent to prison. So her and her two youngest boys took turns for 3 days sitting next to me and making sure that I didn't die. Why they waited for me to come out of this OD comatose I sent myself into in their own house. And I remember waking up, and I just got up and kind of stumbled my way into the bathroom, and I had this black t-shirt on, and the whole front of it, man, was just stale and white from all the foam and shit that I had been spitting up and vomiting for the last 3 days. And I walked out, and I just remember I was pissed because I didn't kill myself, and I was embarrassed because they were all home, right? And I walked out into the kitchen and confronted them all. And none of them said a word to me. They just all walked up, hugged me, and sat down. And then Karina came up and she hugged me. And she started crying. And she took a step back and looked me in my face. And the only thing she said to me was, "What would your little sisters have done if you died?" And that just hit home. For the first time, I realized how selfish I had been every time I tried to take my own life, despite my personal feelings or whether or not I wanted to be here. There's other people, whether or not I know it or whether or not I want to recognize it at the moment. There are people that rely on me, and my little sisters are some of those people. I don't talk to them every day, and I don't see them but like once or twice a year. But if I disappeared, that'd have a serious impact on them. And and I don't see any type of positive outcome in that. And those words were the exact thing that I needed to hear in that moment.
Dang, dude, that's deep.
Yeah, and then she told me she loved me and told me to go clean myself up and that we were going to go get something to eat. And, she started pumping water into my stomach. And, that was the last time I ever attempted to take my own life.
Well, I wasn't aware that happened, but thank you for sharing that with me.
That was the turning point in my life. That's when I decided, I need to stop. One, I need to stop crybabying about my situation all the time, and I need to, move forward. The Lord wants us to move forward and discover the best human we can be. Not the best person that person is, or the best person that person is, We need to strive to be ourselves every day, and as long as we're doing that, we are doing exactly what He wants us to do. And so, walking through all that, I immediately, I picked myself back up. I dusted myself off. I mean, I wasn't over the hill yet, I still had all my issues. I still had a lot of problems I had to figure out. But for the first time, I kind of looked at it as I looked outward instead of inward and was like, you know what? I need to live life for myself, but I need to make sure I make it through life for everybody that loves me, right? And yeah, that's when I started pushing forward. That's when blessings started to come back into my life. That's when I really started to receive, and I started to watch the darkness slip. So,
Like I said, man,
yeah,
I'm happy you're here. Like, I didn't know all that happened, and just hearing that, it hit me because you're one of my friends, and I couldn't imagine losing you. But when Karina asked you, what would your sisters think? I instantly thought to my situation and what would my brother think? Like,
yeah,
I put, so it's deep, it's real, but you've rebuilt yourself and you've kept going even in the darkness. And you've found your healing journey since then. But you've had to start over more than once. And so I want to ask you this. What does success really look like? People think that it's a big arrival, but what does success mean to you?
I've only lived 26 years, and so I'm sure there's people that lived a little bit longer that might have a different view. But what I want to tell everybody younger than me is that success has nothing to do with knowledge. Success has nothing to do with achievement, and success has nothing to do with the actual finish line. Success has to do with the pathway there, the work you're willing to put in, and the failures you're willing to evolve with. That's success. And only in those things can you truly find success. Because without failing, you're never going to know what to protect yourself from or what to prepare yourself for. Without walking the road, you have no experience, so you don't really know what you're talking about, right? Everybody can have a knowledge of something, but not the experience. And without the experience, your knowledge is not really knowledge. It's no better than the word you took off the textbook page. So, success is patience and hope.
Well said. All right, real quick before we transition, I want to give credit where credit is due. That intro at the start of this episode and the outro that you're going to hear at the end, that's all Kyrin. He created that whole thing from scratch, the sound, the vibe, all of it. So I just want to give a shout out to you, man. Thank you for creating those for me. You've been putting in some serious work behind the scenes, but now you're out here launching your own business. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about what you're building and how it has kind of all come together the last couple months.
Well, so my business is I am getting into post editing for videography, and my company's name is Fallen Saint Graphics. And yeah, pretty much what I specialize in is I go in and I do kind of what you'll see at the beginning and end of this video for people like Brock. I put videos together, I color coordinate them, I kind of put stories and timelines together for people in a visual manner and give it a little spunk. Eventually, I'm hoping that I'm making full-fledged videos and doing huge colorization projects and animations for some of the movies you're probably going to be watching on television, Netflix, Hulu, things like that. But until that time, I'm just excited to be able to work with people and start putting art into the world again, and start openly expressing myself in a manner that both helps me and others.
And where can we find Fallen Saint Graphics?
Now you can find us on Instagram. I believe you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Um, And yeah, I mean, I'm growing pretty rapidly, so things like that will probably start to grow platform wise. I will start expanding there, but as of right now, that's where we're at.
Awesome, man. Well, what a conversation today. From rebuilding after rock bottom to stepping into fatherhood, which we didn't really touch on, but you are a father of two now and
Yeah,
launching something of your own. You're proof that starting over doesn't mean starting from scratch, but it means starting with everything that you've learned up to that point. Before we
exactly.
wrap this thing up, Kyrin, I want to give you the floor for anything you want to say to our listeners, any final thoughts, words of encouragement, whatever's on your heart, man. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to let the world know that the rest of the world doesn't define you. One, you don't. People don't get to choose who you become. You do. So put all of your work and your effort into yourself. First mode. If you can't love yourself, then you can't love anything that you're doing. And three, always strive to be the best you. Not the best football player, basketball player, actor, engineer, salesman, like all of that stuff comes and goes with time. But you will be there in the morning and you will be there at night. So put a little put a little time and effort into yourself.
Well said. Well, I just want to say thank you, Kyrin, for not just sharing your story, but for showing up and being real, showing emotion, and telling your story with honesty and grit. You've
Yeah, man.
honestly lived through a lot, and the way that you've turned pain into purpose, that's something that I think people need to hear. But I'm seriously
Well,
so proud of you, man. Keep going. And to be honest, I don't really have the words to transition into this next part of the podcast because honestly, sitting across from someone who's not just a guest, but a friend, someone that I've watched grow, fall, but then rise again, it just hits different.
it does, man. And like I said, I'm super happy to be a part of this, man. Your podcast has helped me too. So it's helped me in areas that at the time I needed help. So I would encourage any viewers to subscribe because what Brock's growing here is it's a good community that everybody can learn, love, and grow with.
Well, I'm glad it's helped you, man, because the pain, the process, the rebuilding, that's all real life. That's not something that you read in a book or scroll past on
Hey,
Instagram.
man, that's success. Those are the defining points of success right there. So
Exactly. And it's a lived experience because the courage to showing up through brokenness, it just makes me think that we all go through seasons, whether it feels like everything's falling apart or where the next version of us, where we once knew, just doesn't exist anymore.
yeah,
Whether it's a relationship ending, a dream that didn't come to fruition, or just waking up one day and realizing that I don't even recognize myself anymore. But
that's the crazy thing, bro. Is you look back like 8 years ago, if me and you were to go sit down with me and you 8 years ago, they wouldn't even know who we were.
nope,
They wouldn't even know who we were.
I don't
Completely
recognize
different,
myself.
completely different view on life. So,
Yeah, man, I don't even recognize myself. Like I was living for the weekend, and
100%, 100%.
I don't know. But what if those three moments that you kind of described today of a rock bottom, what if it wasn't the end? What if it's the beginning of something deeper? Because here's the
I'm
truth,
gonna
Kyron.
tell you right now, no starting line starts halfway up the hill.
Amen.
No starting line is halfway up that hill, man. If you're gonna start anything, you better be prepared for rock bottom because that's where you have to start. And the good Lord above, man, He will guide you. Sometimes you just gotta let God take that wheel and let Him do the driving, because it wasn't until I threw my hands up and basically we're off roading, man. There ain't no road in sight. And God said, "Yeah, dude, I got you." Right?
Yep.
Like, take a breath, look around, count your blessings, keep moving.
And honestly, sometimes God says starting over isn't failure, but it's freedom, because it's a chance to rebuild with intention and to stop performing and start becoming. I've seen it personally in my own life, but I've also seen it today in your story, Kyrin, because your story includes struggle, yes, but it also includes purpose and a new business born from the ashes that once was. And I've noticed over the years that growing isn't always out loud, and growth always isn't going to be in the public light, because sometimes it's just you in the silence making a small choice one after another to be better than who you were yesterday. And so, to all of you listening out there today, I hope you saw yourself in some part of that story that Kyrin shared. Maybe not all the details, but in the fleeing of trying to find your footing again. Because I promise you this, you are not alone. You are not too far gone, and you still have time, because your purpose is out there. You still have breath in your lungs, which means your story is not done. So whether you're starting over for the first time or the 100th time, whether you're in the middle of healing or you're just now admitting that you need it, keep going. Don't aim for perfection, because
Perfection is in the eyes of the beholder. Perfection is an illusion chased by a madman. Perfection is what you finish with at the end of the day. You are perfect as you are. And as long as you wake up tomorrow, you have another opportunity to become perfect again. And that's how the Lord sees you.
but also start aiming for peace and holiness, and ultimately for the people that are counting on you, even if it's just your future version of you. But do not give up. So as I close out today's episode, I want to leave you with a verse that's been sitting heavy on my heart, and that's 1 Peter 5 through 10. And in that verse, it states, and the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Just let that sink in for a moment. I just want to break it down into smaller bits, because there's a lot to unpack in this verse. First, it says the God of all grace. Do you know what that means? That means the God who meets you exactly where you are, no matter how messy, how broken, or how unfinished your story feels. God will be there, and he will meet you where you're at. But then it states, after you've suffered a little while, it doesn't ignore the pain. It doesn't skip over the struggle. There are real seasons where life hurts. Kyrin walked through those hurts of life, but you might be in one of those seasons now. And then it'll say, he will restore you. Not might, he will. Did you catch that? He won't just restore what was lost. He'll make you strong again, firm, steadfast, and holy. And that's what this episode is all about. A man who lost pieces of himself and eventually found his purpose in the rebuild. And then the same God who did it for him can do it for you. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're in the middle of the pain, crawling towards the healing, or finally starting to stand firm again, I want you to know this. God is not done with you. In your story, it's still being shaped. But as I conclude today, I just want to reflect on the journey that we walked through. From rock bottom moments to redemption, from self-destruction to self-discovery. Today's episode was truly beautiful, and it was a reminder that starting over isn't a setback. It's often a setup for something greater. Kyrin's story shows us that when life strips everything away, restoration is still possible. And just like in 1 Peter 5 through 10, it says, after we suffered a little while, God himself will restore us and make us strong, firm, and steadfast. If that spoke to you today, hold on to it. Don't let the pain of your past keep you from the promise of your future. Healing takes time, but it also takes hope, and you need to have both. to move forward and find your purpose. Next week, we're shifting gears, but staying just as purpose-driven. I'm sitting down with someone who took a leap of faith that changed everything, walking away from the comfort to pursue a calling. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. As always, thank you for listening, thank you for showing up, and thank you for being a part of the stories that shape us. So, until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep becoming who you were meant to be all along. This has been The Stories That Shape Us. Join us each week for real stories, real growth, and real impact. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.